Asterisk, what if the way a man behaves in bed could reveal his deepest feelings for you? Not just lust, not just attraction, but real, soul-deep love? According to legendary psychologist Carl Jung, when a man is truly in love, his most intimate actions change in ways he can't fake. These aren't just random gestures, they're unconscious signals, rooted in psychology, proving his emotional devotion. And today, we're breaking down the 8 unmistakable things men only do in bed when they're deeply, irrevocably in love. Number 1. He prioritizes emotional connection over physical pleasure. When a man is deeply in love, his approach to intimacy transforms, not because he desires pleasure any less, but because his need for emotional connection becomes just as powerful, if not more so. Carl Jung's concept of the anima, the unconscious feminine aspect within a man's psyche, plays a crucial role here. The anima represents a man's capacity for tenderness, vulnerability, and emotional depth, qualities that surface most profoundly when he is in love. In Jungian psychology, the anima isn't just a passive force, it's an inner compass that guides a man toward wholeness. When he is emotionally bonded to his partner, this feminine energy harmonizes with his masculine drive, shifting his focus from mere physical release to a deeper, more soulful union. Sex becomes more than an act. It becomes a language of love, a way to merge not just bodies but hearts and minds. Number 2, he's fully present. True intimacy requires more than physical proximity. It demands presence, a complete merging of mind, body, and spirit in the moment. Carl Jung's concept of individuation, the process of becoming psychologically whole, sheds light on why this level of presence is so rare and so powerful. A man who has begun this journey towards self-realization doesn't just perform intimacy, he inhabits it. His attention isn't fractured by distractions, his movements aren't rushed by selfish urgency, and his focus isn't diluted by external noise. When he is with you, fully, unreservedly, in a way that transcends the physical and touches the sacred. 3. He expresses vulnerability. There exists a profound moment in every meaningful relationship when the masks come off, when the carefully constructed facades of strength and invulnerability crumble to reveal the tender, trembling truth beneath. This is the territory of Jung's shadow work, where a man's deepest fears and long-hidden wounds finally find voice in the sacred space between lovers. When a man begins to share these vulnerable parts of himself in the quiet intimacy of the bedroom, you're witnessing something extraordinary, not just trust, but a fundamental transformation in how he relates to himself and to you. The bedroom becomes more than a place of physical connection. It transforms into a sanctuary where his soul feels safe enough to emerge from hiding. In the afterglow of intimacy, when the world feels far away and defenses are naturally lowered, a man deeply in love might unexpectedly share childhood memories that still haunt him, or confess professional anxieties he's been too proud to voice by daylight. He might reveal secret insecurities about his body or abilities, or admit to past heartbreaks that shaped his view of love. These are not calculated confessions, but organic outpourings, words that slip out almost against his will, carried on the tide of emotional openness that true intimacy creates. Jung understood this phenomenon well. His concept of the shadow reveals how love acts as the ultimate permission slip for men to acknowledge and integrate the parts of themselves society taught them to suppress. The bedroom becomes the one place where the performance of masculinity can finally be set aside. What makes this vulnerability so remarkable is precisely how hard-won it is. From their earliest years, boys are conditioned to equate emotional expression with weakness, to view tenderness as incompatible with strength. They learn to armor themselves against judgment, to keep their fears and longings locked away where no one can see them. This cultural programming runs deep, which is why when a man does choose to be vulnerable with you, It represents a monumental act of courage. He's not just sharing information, he's risking rejection, betting his fragile parts won't be used against him later. In those quiet moments of pillow talk, he's giving you something far more precious than his body. He's giving you access to the unpolished, unguarded truth of who he is when no one is watching. This level of emotional nakedness creates a bond that transcends physical attraction. When a man trusts you with his vulnerabilities, he's essentially saying, "I believe you'll handle my heart with the same care I want to handle yours." It's the ultimate demonstration of trust, one that reshapes the entire foundation of your connection. The paradox, of course, is that in showing you his perceived weaknesses, he's actually demonstrating his greatest strength, the courage to be authentic. This is the alchemy Jung described in Shadow Work. By bringing our darkness into the light of loving acceptance, we don't diminish ourselves, we become whole. The contrast with less meaningful relationships couldn't be starker. In casual encounters, vulnerability is typically avoided at all costs. Conversations stay surface level, emotions. Number 4, he seeks to please you. There comes a point in a man's emotional evolution where his approach to intimacy undergoes a quiet but radical shift, where his focus moves from taking to giving, from receiving pleasure to becoming a student of yours. This transformation lies at the heart of what Carl Jung called the union of opposites, that sacred alchemy where masculine and feminine energies within a person find balance. When a man is truly in love, his desire becomes about more than his own satisfaction. It becomes a journey of discovery, an ongoing exploration of how to bring you as much pleasure and connection as he experiences himself. You'll notice it in the questions he asks, not the performative kind meant to impress, but the genuine, sometimes awkward inquiries about what makes you feel good. He listens to your answers with the concentration of someone memorizing scripture, storing each revelation about your body and responses like precious artifacts. This generosity of attention manifests in countless small but significant ways. He doesn't treat your pleasure as an afterthought or a bonus feature. He considers it essential to the experience, as vital as his own fulfillment. There's an absence of hurry in his touch, a patience that suggests he's measuring success not by how quickly things progress, but by how completely you're immersed in the moment. When you react to something he does, he notices not just the obvious signs, but the subtle ones too, the change in your breathing, the tension in your muscles, the unconscious sounds you make. He remembers what works and returns to it, not out of routine, but because your pleasure has become intertwined with his own. This is the difference between sex as a transaction and intimacy as a shared language. One leaves both parties fed but unchanged, while the other transforms how they relate to each other beyond the bedroom. The contrast between a lover and a user becomes painfully clear in these moments. A user approaches intimacy as a means to an end. His satisfaction is the destination, and your body is simply the vehicle to get there. Even when he's technically skilled or attentive, there's an underlying self-interest that taints the experience. His generosity has limits. His interest wanes once his own needs are met. But a lover? His attention doesn't flicker when he reaches his climax. If anything, he becomes more attuned to you in the aftermath, equally content to hold you through the aftershocks of pleasure or simply bask in the quiet connection between you. Where a user takes, a lover gives, and in that giving, paradoxically receives something far greater than physical release. Jung understood that this balance of giving and receiving mirrors the most profound truths about human connection. In his concept of the Konyoung, the sacred marriage of opposites, he saw the resolution of our deepest psychological tensions. When a man loves you completely, he stops seeing your pleasure as separate from his own. The boundaries between giver and receiver blur until there's only the shared experience, the electric current passing between you. This is why selfishness becomes impossible for him, not because he's suppressing his desires, but because his desires have expanded to include yours. his satisfaction becomes inextricably linked to yours, his joy multiplied by your joy. This behavior matters because it reveals a fundamental truth about his feelings for you. Anyone can fake affection for a night or even months, but sustained, selfless attention to your pleasure? That's not something that can be manufactured or maintained through willpower alone. It springs naturally from genuine love and respect, from seeing you not as a means to an end but as a whole person whose pleasure matters as much as his own. In these moments, you're witnessing more than just sexual generosity. You're seeing proof that his connection to you transcends the physical. The bedroom becomes merely the stage where this deeper truth plays out, that to love you for him is to cherish every part of you, to seek your fulfillment as passionately as he seeks his own. When you find a man who approaches intimacy this way, you've found someone who understands love not as conquest or consumption, but as the sacred art of mutual becoming. Number 5. He makes intimate eye contact. There exists a moment in true intimacy when words become unnecessary, when the most profound communication happens in complete silence, when his eyes lock onto yours and time seems to suspend itself. This is no casual glance or passing look, but a deliberate, soul-piercing connection that goes far beyond physical attraction. Carl Jung often spoke of eyes as windows to the soul, and nowhere does this truth reveal itself more powerfully than in the vulnerable space between lovers. When a man maintains deep eye contact during your most intimate moments, he's not just looking at you, he's seeing you, in the most complete sense of the word. This is the kind of gaze that bypasses all defenses and facades, that communicates more truth than any declaration of love ever could. There's an unspoken honesty in this visual connection that transcends language, a silent conversation where his pupils dilate with desire, his eyelids grow heavy with emotion, and his entire being seems focused on drinking you in through sight alone. The biological underpinnings of this phenomenon reveal just how powerful such eye contact truly is. When two people maintain prolonged eye contact during intimacy, their brains release a flood of oxytocin, often called the love hormone or bonding chemical. This isn't mere poetry, it's physiological fact. Oxytocin strengthens emotional connections, fosters trust, and creates powerful associations between pleasure and the person you're sharing it with. But beyond the science lies something more mystical, the way his gaze seems to hold your entire being in its focus, the way you can feel seen down to your very essence. This is why intense eye contact during lovemaking often feels more intimate than any physical act. It's the difference between being touched and being known. Jung would recognize this as a manifestation of the unio mystica, that sacred merging where two souls recognize each other beyond the limitations of the physical form. What makes this behavior so significant is how it contrasts with more superficial encounters. In casual sex, eye contact tends to be fleeting or avoided altogether. Glances are stolen rather than sustained, as if neither party wants to risk seeing or being seen too deeply. There's safety in keeping things physical rather than allowing that soul-level connection to form. But when a man is deeply in love, his eyes will seek yours almost compulsively, drawn to them like a magnet. You'll notice how his gaze lingers even during the most intense moments, how he seems to be memorizing your expressions and reactions not just with his hands or lips, but with his eyes. This creates a feedback loop of intimacy. The more he looks, the more connected you feel. The more connected you feel, the more oxytocin floods both your systems, binding you together on a biological level that reinforces the emotional bond. The vulnerability required for this sustained eye contact cannot be overstated. To maintain that visual connection is to stand completely emotionally exposed, with nowhere to hide. This is why so many people instinctively close their eyes during intimacy. It's a protective mechanism against being truly seen in moments of abandon. When a man keeps his eyes open and fixed on yours, he's demonstrating a level of comfort and trust that goes far beyond physical attraction. He's not just witnessing your pleasure, he's witnessing you in all your raw, unfiltered humanity. And in that witnessing, he's offering you the same gift, permission to see him completely, without the masks and performances that typically shield men from emotional exposure. This reciprocal vulnerability creates a sacred space where love isn't just felt or spoken, but visually affirmed and reinforced with every shared glance. In a world where true connection grows increasingly rare, where so many interactions happen through screens and mediated personas, this kind of direct soul-to-soul contact becomes revolutionary. When a man looks at you this way during your most vulnerable moments, he's not just having sex with you, he's communing with you. The eyes may be windows to the soul, but it takes genuine love to have the courage to both look through them and allow yourself to be seen in return. This is why, of all the intimate behaviors a man can display, sustained eye contact remains one of the most undeniable proofs of deep emotional connection, a silent language of love that needs no translation. Number 6. He sleeps differently with you. The way a man sleeps beside you reveals truths his waking self might never articulate. Carl Jung's concept of the collective unconscious suggests that our most primal behaviors emerge when consciousness surrenders to sleep, when the masks we wear by day slip away to expose our deepest needs and attachments. In those vulnerable hours of slumber, his body becomes an honest map of his feelings, the distance or closeness between you, the protective curves or withdrawn postures, all sketching a portrait of his emotional connection more truthful than any declaration. When a man is deeply in love, his sleeping body seeks yours instinctively, not out of conscious thought but from that ancient place within us all that knows what and who feels like home. You'll notice it first in the way he positions himself around you in sleep. There's an unconscious protectiveness in how his body arranges itself, an arm draped across your waist, his chest pressed against your back, his legs entwined with yours as if to say even in unconsciousness, I'm here. These aren't calculated moves but instinctive ones, emerging from that primordial part of the brain that recognizes you as safe harbor. His breathing synchronizes with yours, his movements in sleep adjusting to avoid disturbing your rest. Even in deepest slumber, some part of him remains aware of your presence, pulling you closer if you shift away, murmuring sleepy endearments without fully waking. This is the sleep of secure attachment, where your presence doesn't disrupt his rest but enhances it, where being near you is as necessary to his peace as the air he breathes. The contrast with less meaningful connections couldn't be more striking. When love is absent or shallow, sleep becomes a solitary act even in shared beds. You'll notice the physical distance, his body angled away, the careful avoidance of contact, the way he claims his territory of the mattress without regard for yours. His sleep is restless or overly still, his movements jerky with tension rather than fluid with comfort. Some men in this situation will actually sleep better alone, their bodies subconsciously rejecting the forced intimacy of sharing space with someone who doesn't truly comfort their psyche. But a man in love sleeps more soundly with you than without, his nervous system recognizing your presence as safety, his unconscious mind treating your body as an extension of his own. This nighttime intimacy carries profound psychological significance. Sleep represents our most vulnerable state. We're defenseless, unaware, completely open. How a man positions himself in this state speaks volumes about his true feelings and level of trust. The lover who pulls you close even in sleep is demonstrating a bond that goes beyond physical desire or conscious affection. He's revealing an attachment rooted in the deepest layers of his being. His body, free from societal constraints or performative masculinity, simply knows you belong together. There's a beautiful selflessness to this unconscious closeness. He's not holding you for his benefit, but because some ancient, wise part of him understands that connection shouldn't end when consciousness does. Modern psychology confirms what Jung intuited, that couples who sleep close together tend to have stronger, more secure relationships. But beyond the studies and data lies something more poetic. In his sleeping embrace, a man shows you his heart without words, without pretense, in the purest language his body knows. The way he reaches for you in the dark, the contented sighs when you settle against each other, the unguarded moments before waking when his face relaxes into complete peace, these are the silent sonnets of true attachment. When you witness this level of unconscious devotion, you're seeing more than habit or comfort. You're seeing evidence that you've become woven into the very fabric of his being, so essential that even in sleep, his body refuses to be parted from yours. Number 7. He uses loving words. The power of language in love transcends mere communication. It becomes an alchemical force that transforms physical intimacy into soulful connection. Carl Jung understood words as living symbols that activate archetypal energies within the psyche, and when a man speaks from the heart during your most vulnerable moments, he's not just making sounds, he's weaving spells that bind you together on levels deeper than conscious understanding. These aren't rehearsed lines or empty flattery, but spontaneous utterances that bubble up from some sacred place within him, words imbued with such emotional weight they seem to vibrate in the air between you. When he whispers, "I love you," not as punctuation to a romantic evening but as an involuntary exhalation during passion's peak, when pet names flow from his lips with natural tenderness rather than forced affection, you're hearing the authentic voice of his heart speaking through the lover archetype that's awakened within him. These verbal affirmations take many forms, each carrying its own unique resonance. There are the private nicknames that emerge organically from your shared history, names that might sound silly to outsiders but hold layers of meaning only you two understand. These aren't generic terms of endearment but linguistic fingerprints of your unique bond, words that have absorbed the essence of your relationship through repetition and emotional charge. Then there are the unprompted declarations that arise during physical connection, not the performative "you're beautiful" of early courtship, but the raw, almost pained "God, I love you" that escapes him when he's overwhelmed by feeling. Most telling are the specific, heartfelt compliments that reveal how deeply he sees you. Not just admiration for your body, but reverence for the way your mind works, your resilience, your kindness, qualities that have nothing to do with physicality yet become intertwined with his desire for you. Why do these spoken words carry such significance? Because while actions can be misinterpreted or performed out of obligation, authentic verbal expressions during intimacy come from a place too vulnerable to fake. The bedroom strips away social niceties and reveals people in their most unguarded state. When a man chooses to voice his feelings in these moments, he's giving you access to truths he might not even articulate to himself in daylight hours. Jung would recognize this as the anima speaking through him, the feminine aspect of his psyche that governs emotional expression and connection. The lover's words that flow during intimacy are less conscious constructions than they are manifestations of this inner voice finally being given permission to speak freely. This is why they land with such weight. They bypass the critical mind and go straight to the heart. The contrast with empty compliments or silent encounters highlights the difference between lust and love. Many men can perform skillful physical acts without emotional investment, but few can sustain heartfelt verbal intimacy without genuine feeling behind it. Words require vulnerability that actions can avoid. To speak love is to risk rejection in a way that physicality doesn't. When he tells you what you mean to him while looking into your eyes, when his voice breaks with emotion as he describes how you make him feel, he's offering something far more precious than pleasure. He's giving you the inner monologue of his heart, the running commentary of a man who's truly, deeply in love. These aren't words crafted to achieve an effect, but language erupting from overflow, from a place so full of feeling it can't help but spill over into sound. In our digital age where communication has become increasingly fragmented and superficial, these verbal exchanges during intimacy represent one of the last truly sacred forms of dialogue. They create a feedback loop of emotional safety. The more he expresses his feelings verbally, the safer you feel to open emotionally. The more you open, the more inspired he becomes to voice his devotion. This is the bridge Jung spoke of. Language's power to connect two separate consciousnesses in shared understanding. When a man consistently uses loving words during your most intimate moments, he's not just complimenting you. He's performing an act of magic, using the alchemy of language to transform physical connection into spiritual communion. In these exchanges, you don't just feel desired, you feel known, cherished, and above all, loved in the fullest sense of the word. Number 8. He feels a sense of spiritual connection. At the pinnacle of intimate connection exists an experience that defies simple explanation, a moment where physical pleasure gives way to something far more profound. Carl Jung described this phenomenon as the unio mystica, that sacred merging where two souls temporarily dissolve their boundaries to touch something divine. When a man is deeply in love, sex transcends the realm of the physical and becomes a spiritual encounter. You'll recognize it in the reverent silence that follows, in the way he holds you afterward, not with urgency but with something akin to worship, as if he's trying to preserve the echo of that connection a little longer. This isn't just satisfaction, it's transformation. The bedroom becomes a temple where the most ordinary acts take on extraordinary meaning, where every touch feels consecrated by something greater than either of you. There are unmistakable signs that this mystical union has occurred. After intimacy, he doesn't immediately roll away or break the connection, but lingers in a state of quiet awe, as if trying to process what just passed between you. The air feels charged, different, not just with spent energy, but with something more elusive. He might struggle to find words, not out of indifference, but because language suddenly feels inadequate to describe the depth of what he's feeling. You'll notice it in his eyes, a new softness, a vulnerability that wasn't there before, as if the experience has peeled back another layer of his defenses. Most telling of all is the sense of homecoming, not just physical comfort, but a soul-deep recognition that in these moments with you, he's found a place of belonging that transcends any physical location. This spiritual dimension creates a stark contrast with casual encounters, where sex remains firmly rooted in the physical realm. Pleasure without love may be intense, but it's ultimately finite. Once the body is satisfied, the experience concludes. There's no lingering sense of awe, no unspoken gratitude, no feeling that something sacred has occurred. The silence afterward feels empty rather than full, a space to be filled with small talk or immediate separation rather than basking in shared presence. But when love infuses physical connection, the experience leaves both participants subtly changed, not just sated, but enlarged, as if through each other they've briefly touched something eternal. Jung understood that these transcendent experiences are what elevate lovemaking from a biological function to a sacred act. In his studies of alchemical symbolism, he found parallels between the mystic's union with the divine and the lover's union with the beloved. Both represent attempts to reconcile opposites and achieve wholeness through connection. When a man looks at you with that particular blend of wonder and gratitude after intimacy, he's reflecting this ancient truth, that in loving you completely, he's touched something beyond himself. This is why such moments resist casual replication. They require not just physical compatibility, but emotional openness, psychological readiness, and that ineffable spark that transforms mechanics into mystery. The difference ultimately lies in the residue the experience leaves behind. Casual sex dissipates like mist, pleasurable in the moment, but ultimately insubstantial. But when a spiritual connection occurs, it lingers in both partners like a sweet aftertaste, coloring their entire relationship with deeper meaning. He'll carry the memory of those moments with him long after they've passed, not just as recollections of pleasure, but as touchstones of emotional truth. This is the surest sign of all, when physical intimacy becomes more than the sum of its parts, when two people come together and somehow contact the infinite through each other. In these moments, you're not just lovers, you're pilgrims who've briefly glimpsed the divine through the portal of human connection. As we've journeyed through these 8 profound behaviors, a powerful truth emerges. When a man is deeply in love, every aspect of his being aligns to show you. His touch becomes language, his vulnerability becomes strength, and his presence becomes a gift. From prioritizing emotional connection to experiencing spiritual transcendence, these aren't just random acts, but a symphony of unconscious signals that reveal his heart's true orientation. Carl Jung's wisdom reminds us that real love isn't something we can fake or force. It's written in the quiet moments, the unguarded gestures, the way his entire being reorganizes itself around your presence in his life. Perhaps you recognize some of these signs in your own relationship, the way he holds your gaze a second longer than necessary, the vulnerability he shows only with you, or the profound peace that settles over you both after intimacy. These are the fingerprints of genuine love, the subtle but unmistakable evidence that his connection to you goes beyond surface-level attraction. If these behaviors feel familiar, you've likely touched something rare and beautiful. If you're still waiting to experience them, let this be your guide, not to settle for less, but to recognize love when it arrives in its truest form. Now I'd love to hear from you. Have you noticed these unconscious signs in your partner? Which behavior resonated most deeply with your experiences? Share your stories in the comments below. Your insights might help others recognize love's authentic face. If this exploration of psychology and intimacy spoke to you, consider liking this video and subscribing for more content that bridges ancient wisdom with modern relationships. Turn on notifications so you won't miss our upcoming deep dives into the psychology of connection, because understanding love shouldn't be a mystery, but a journey we take together. Remember, when a man's body and soul agree in their devotion, you'll know, not because he says so, but because every unconscious part of him shows you.